The world gets smaller first. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like something closing in without noise. A man walks in with memories, plans, people in his head. At the start, he still thinks like someone from the outside. He counts time in months, maybe years. He thinks about fixing things when he gets out, but that kind of thinking doesn't survive long in there. It's too heavy. It drags on you. So the mind does what it has to do. It cuts things down. I watched it happen to men who came in strong. One guy had a business outside. He used to talk about expansion, about numbers, about deals. First few months, that's all he spoke about. Then slowly, it stopped. Not because he lost it, but because there was no use carrying a world he couldn't touch. His conversations changed. Less about the future, more about the next meal, the next movement, the next day. That's how it starts. You don't notice it at first. Another. Man had pictures of his mother and his little brother. Every night he would sit on his bunk and just look at them, quiet, no words. That was his way of holding on. But time inside doesn't reward that kind of attachment. It turns it into weight. After a while, he stopped looking. The pictures stayed there, but they became just paper. Not because he stopped loving them, but because he had to survive the distance. Inside, your world becomes the cell, the yard, the routine. You wake up, you move, you eat, you train. Same faces, same sounds. You stop thinking far ahead, because thinking far ahead has no place to land. Even conversations stay small, safe. No one talks too much about dreams. That kind of talk makes you vulnerable. They used to call me P482. In there, that number mattered more than anything I was before. And when your world shrinks like that, everything that doesn't fit inside it starts to fade. Not gone. Just pushed so far back that it stops guiding you. And once your world gets small enough, there's no space left for the man you used to be. That's where the next change begins. When the world gets that small, something has to replace what no longer fits. That's where identity starts to shift. Not in a dramatic way, quiet, forced. A man doesn't sit down and decide who he wants to become. The place decides for him. Inside, who you were before doesn't carry weight. No one cares what you did out there. Degrees, money, status, all of that stays at the gate. What matters is how you move now, how you speak, how you respond when pressure comes. I've seen men walk in with confidence from the outside and lose it in weeks. Not because they were weak, but because the rules changed and they didn't understand them. There was a quiet guy in my unit, kept his head down, spoke soft, avoided problems. On the outside, maybe that worked for him. Inside, it made him a target. People test that kind of energy. Not always with violence, sometimes just with presence, standing too close, asking questions that don't need answers, watching how you react. He tried to stay the same. It didn't last. One day, he snapped. Not big, not loud, but enough. After that, he changed. His posture got tighter. His voice got shorter. He learned to hold eye contact longer than he was comfortable with. That's how identity gets rebuilt in there. Not from growth, but from pressure. They used to call me P482. That number became a role. It came with expectations. You carry yourself a certain way because you know eyes are always on you. Respect isn't given. It's measured daily. And once you step into that role long enough, it starts to feel normal. The problem is, that version of you was built for a cage. It works in a place where everything is controlled, where every move has meaning, but it doesn't translate outside the same way. Still, most men don't question it, because that identity kept them safe. And when something keeps you safe long enough, you stop asking if it's still needed. That's where brotherhood comes in, because no one holds that identity alone. That identity doesn't stand on its own. It needs other men around it to hold it up. That's where brotherhood forms. Not the kind people talk about outside. Not built on comfort or choice. Built on pressure. Built on the understanding that alone, you're exposed. Inside, you don't trust easily. You watch first. You listen more than you speak. Every man is a question mark until proven otherwise. But over time, patterns show who stands when things get tense, who folds, who talks too much, who stays solid. That's how lines start to form. Small groups, then tighter circles. Not because anyone is looking for friendship, but because survival pushes men together. I remember a man who used to train with us every day. Same routine, no excuses. We ate at the same time, sat in the same corner. He wasn't loud, but he was consistent. That matters in a place like that. Consistency builds a kind of trust, not emotional, but practical. You know what a man will do because you've seen it enough times. Then one situation changed everything. Pressure came from outside our circle. Nothing dramatic from the outside perspective. Just a moment where a decision had to be made. Stand with your people or step away to protect yourself. He hesitated. That was enough. In there, hesitation gets read fast. He chose distance. After that, nothing had to be said. His place was gone. That's the cost of that kind of brotherhood. It's real, but it's conditional. Loyalty exists, but it's tied to action, not words. And betrayal doesn't always come as something loud. Sometimes it's just a step back at the wrong time. You carry that lesson with you. That trust is always measured. That every bond has a limit. And once your mind locks into that way of thinking, it doesn't switch off just because the gate opens. Because if every connection feels like a risk, then safety starts to look like control. And control doesn't exist in open space. When a man gets used to measuring every connection, every movement, every risk, his mind starts looking for one thing: control. Inside, control is limited, but it's clear. You know the boundaries. You know where you can stand, where you can't. You know the sounds, the routines, the timing. Even the chaos has structure. So when he steps outside, people expect relief, space, freedom, options. But that's not always what he feels. Sometimes it's the opposite. Too much space feels like no protection. Too many options feel like no direction. I knew a man who got out after years inside. First night in his own place, he didn't sleep. Not because he wasn't tired, because it was too quiet. No noise from other cells, no footsteps in the corridor, no voices in the background. Silence. Like that doesn't feel peaceful when your mind isn't used to it. It feels like something is missing. After a few days, he started changing the space. Small things. Moving the bed closer to the wall, leaving the light on, putting a chair against the door before he slept. Not to stop anything real, but to recreate a feeling he understood. A boundary, something solid. That's how deep it goes. The body is free, but the mind is still trying to rebuild the cage because the cage made sense. Out there, no one tells you when to move, when to eat, when to stop. That sounds like freedom. But if your mind has been shaped by control, it feels like exposure, like you're standing in the open with nothing to hold on to. So what does a man do? He reaches for the only thing that ever gave him structure. Discipline. But discipline in there and discipline out here are not the same thing. And that difference is where a lot of men start to lose their footing. Discipline is what keeps a man from breaking inside. Not motivation, not feelings. Repetition. Simple work done over and over. Push-ups on cold floors. Pull-ups on metal bars that cut into your hands. Same numbers, same pace, day after day. It gives the mind something to hold on to, something that doesn't change when everything else is unstable. I knew a man who never missed a session. Didn't matter what was going on around him. Noise, tension, lack of sleep. He still showed up to the same spot and did the same work. People respected that. Not because it looked good, but because it showed control. In a place where control is limited, that kind of discipline stands out. But here's the part most don't understand. Inside, discipline is supported by structure. You don't have endless choices. You don't have distractions the same way. Your day is already shaped for you. Training fits into that system. It becomes a fixed point. Then you step outside. Now there's no forced schedule, no one counting you in, no one watching the clock. You wake up and the day is wide open. That same man who never missed a workout starts skipping. Not all at once. First it's a delay, then an excuse, then silence. It's not because he became weak. It's because the discipline he built was tied to an environment. When the environment disappeared, the structure went with it. Discipline without direction doesn't hold. It drifts. It turns into something random. And when it becomes random, it loses power. That's where a lot of men get stuck. They think surviving inside proved everything. But surviving inside and building a life outside are two different things. If a man doesn't rebuild structure for himself, the same habits that kept him alive won't carry him forward. And that's why getting out is not the real challenge. Staying out mentally, that's where the real work begins. Getting out is one moment. Staying out is a process that doesn't stop. A man walks through the gate and people think that's the end of the story. It's not. That's where the real pressure starts. Because now there are no walls to blame, no system to point at, just him and the way he thinks. I've seen men come home and still move like they never left. Every conversation feels like a test. Every look feels like a challenge. They keep their distance from people who actually want to help them, not because they don't need it, but because they don't trust it. In their head, trust always comes with a cost. There was a man I knew who got out and stayed clean. No trouble, no noise. But he lived alone, worked alone, trained alone. Same routine every day. Wake up, push-ups, pull-ups, dips, go to work, come back, repeat. On the surface, it looked like discipline. But if you looked closer, it was the same cage, just without bars. No growth, no connection, no expansion, just controlled survival. Then I saw another man take a different path. Same background, same years inside. But he started small. Training in the park, same time every morning, not hiding, letting people see him. Then a simple job. Then rebuilding contact with family. Slow, awkward at first, but consistent. He didn't try to become someone new overnight. He just replaced the structure he lost with one he built himself. That's the difference. Leaving prison physically happens once. Leaving it mentally is a decision repeated every day. In small actions, in how you speak, in who you let close, in whether you choose growth over control. My name is Elias. They used to call me P482. I've seen men stand in open space and still live like the walls are there. And I've seen a few realize something simple. The cage was never locked. They were just still holding the door closed.